Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our May Progressive Roundtable. I'm Andrea Miller, the Executive Director of People Demanding Action. Our roundtable today is going to focus on labor and jobs and how important that is to the American economy. This is the backbone of the American economy. So we're going to get started right away with Mike Hirsch from Progressive Democrats of America talking about the letters or the legislation that is in our letter drops today, which is focused on labor, and then also talking about some upcoming events. So, Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Andrea. As most people who have watched any of these letter drops know very well, we've been delivering letters to members of Congress here on the Hill with Andrea and Rick and Stephen Spitz and the Hill team for several months, for a few years actually. And we're also delivering letters all across the country in the home districts of the members of Congress and also in the home offices of senators. So our reach is much, much farther than maybe would appear at first. And we're having an amazing impact bringing new co-sponsors onto legislation and also building support for opposition to things like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is very important. It could come up as soon as they see an opening and most likely the lame duck session. And as Andrea mentioned, we have a theme every month. This month we're focusing on fairness, pay equity, and jobs. So we're looking at getting more co-sponsors for the resolution to lift the arbitrary time limit on the Equal Rights Amendment so we can do the three-state approach, which means that if we can get the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment in any of the three states, which are all three of the remaining states, Michelle, that haven't ratified yet. 15 haven't yet, and we need 3 more, and we have another amendment to the Constitution, which would bring equality into the Constitution for men and women, because both men and women suffer discrimination, and it is constitutional now because the ERA has not been ratified, and we're hoping to ratify that. Building on that, we're also supporting the Paycheck Fairness Act. The Equal Rights Amendment makes such acts unnecessary, and also if we wouldn't need to pass that, and we wouldn't need to worry about any state or federal government repealing statutory protections, which is why the ERA is so important. We're also looking to get more co-sponsors for the Paid Workers a Living Wage Act. America needs a raise. Minimum wage has not gone up in several years. During that time, the value, the spending value of the minimum wage has eroded to the point where it's so low, so far beneath what people need to support their families. That's really just a tragic situation, and it would actually save us a lot of money if we had employers pay everybody a living wage as opposed to having people who work even a full-time job and have to apply for nutritional supplements to make sure their families are fed. They can barely pay their rent. They're maxing out their credit cards. They're going bankrupt. All this would be avoided if we moved the minimum wage up to a living wage, which would allow people to support their families and put us on par with all the other developed countries. And it's just ridiculous that we haven't gotten this done yet, and we're looking forward to getting co-sponsors on that. We're also looking for more co-sponsors for HR 1000, which is one of my favorite bills. I actually had the privilege of working with Mr. Connors and his amazing staff putting that bill together. And it's also known as the Humphrey-Hawkins Full Employment and Training Act. It would allow anybody who wants a job or training for a job to have that provided for them. We would create a lot of private sector jobs by encouraging repairs of crumbling infrastructure, roads, bridges, the metro system here in D.C., and public transportation all around the country, which is in badly need of repair for decades now, really since the Reagan administration decided they were going to cut corners and refuse to repair our roads and bridges. We have a situation where roads, bridges, and tunnels can fail at any time. One happened famously in Minnesota, killing a lot of people. We're all driving on borrowed time, and it's time to invest in infrastructure, rebuilding our schools, providing money for research, and numerous other things. HR 1000 would put America back to work. It would give everybody a job and train people for the new jobs. In the 21st century, it's great legislation. Another bill by Mr. Connors is the Employ Young Americans Now Act, and what that would do is take people who now have nothing but time on their hands and can't get the experience that they need and the training that they need to move on up and participate fully in the economy. We'll let them get their feet on that first bottom rung of the ladder and start climbing towards the American dream. And we used to have this everywhere, and it's one of the things that was eliminated, it was cut out. It's an investment in our future. Young people are our future. If young people can't get these jobs, then they're looking at a very bleak life. That's not acceptable in the United States of America. We're also looking for new co-sponsors for the Workplace Democracy Act, which will amend the National Labor Relations Act to allow people to form, join, and assist labor organizations. Labor unions built the middle class in the United States. Labor unions brought us everything from healthcare to the weekend, to the 40-hour work week, to safer workplaces, to a voice in the workplace. As the union a few billionaires and big corporations might oppose this. Every man, woman, and child in the United States, every small business should support this because strong unions make for a strong United States of America.
Oh, Mike, you are not finished. Upcoming events.
Okay, upcoming events. PDA will be in Chicago with our good friends, the National Nurses United, and an ever-lengthening list of great organizations to figure out what we're going to do on the next step in the Bernie Sanders movement, the political revolution that all of us have been working for so long. We'll get together, we're going to figure out what to do next. There's going to be music, there's going to be amazing speakers, it's going to be a great opportunity to get together. And we encourage everybody to join us. It's going to be Father's Day weekend. We'll wrap up in time for you to spend time with your dad. And so that's it's in about
17, 18, 19.
17, 18, 19 June. And then during the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, PDA will once again have our Progressive Central, the People's Convention. We had one in Denver, we had one in Charlotte, and we also have them whenever our president is inaugurated in D.C. So this would be our 5th one on my count, if you don't count the original one that PDA was organized in Roxbury right after the Democratic Convention in 2004. So this has become a tradition for us, and we urge everybody to make plans to join us there. There's going to be plenty of things to do for that. The half week or so that the DNC will be there, and we're going to be kicking off right after a big climate march that will be in Philadelphia. So come for the climate march, stay for our people's convention, which we call Progressive Central. It'll be a great time. And I also just want to say, a couple of years ago, around this time, we brought together the PDA family for a memorial for our founder, Tim Carpenter. And it was an amazing time. We were able to say goodbye to our dear friend and our colleague and leader. And we also publicly launched our Run Bernie Run campaign, which was Tim Carpenter's last campaign. Tim sacrificed the last few weeks or a few months of his life working on this to get Bernie to run, and he did. The rest is history, and we're still making that history. So wherever you are, Tim, thank you so much. Couldn't have done it without you.
Thanks, Mike. And next up, we're going to have Jasmine Jefferson of Social Security Works. Jasmine's going to give us an update on legislation that is in Congress, where we are, and what we are going to need to do. So, Jasmine.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to put this a little closer. So I can give a short update on legislation. As you know, it's about to be election season, so legislation kind of sits there, which might be a good thing when we talk about Social Security. But something that I think we could definitely use your help on is continuing to push the expansion resolution in the House. Representative Schakowsky's resolution is H-Res 393. We used that particular resolution along with Representative Larson's bill. It's H.R. 1391, the Social Security 2100 Act. Those two added together is how we come up with the number of members who support expansion. So whenever you go out to advocate on behalf of expansion, those two are the pieces of legislation that we use to calculate that number. So I don't think that'll change over the next couple of months. I believe there is one other expansion bill I know that's in the works in the House side, and then probably one other, and maybe one or two more in the Senate side. But something that's probably a little, we always call it, it's less sexy than legislation, is to talk a little bit about the nominations that we recently blocked for the Social Security public trustees. And so this is something I consider to be a win and something that was exciting to see. And I'm sure probably some members of PDA made some phone calls to offices to push against these two public trustee nominations. So just to explain a little further, Social Security has a trust fund, as we all know, almost $3 billion. And in charge of that trust fund are some watchdogs, and that would include like the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of HHS, the Social Security Commissioner, and then there are two public trustees. And for the public, their job is to really increase confidence in the public to make sure that the system is there and that it's working. The two nominees that the president put forward are the same two nominees that he's had for that he nominated previously, and quite frankly, one of them has done a very good job of undermining the program in his life outside of his position, and we find that very troublesome and disturbing. And so we pushed very hard against one in particular, one nominee for the position. And last week, the Senate Finance Committee held a hearing on his nomination, or both nominees, and we were very successful. So for those of you who did make phone calls, please know that your work was well done. We had most of the Democrats that are on the Senate Finance Committee showed up, and not only did they show up, they asked incredible questions, and then they proceeded to make it clear that they would block their nomination, or particular one nomination. And so those two will probably go down. I don't foresee a path for them. We think it will come to a vote because they can push it through. It's some special sort of nomination that will go to the floor probably, or at least get voted through in committee. But I'll say that our real champion was Senator Sherrod Brown. He took the lead on this and made it clear that he was going to block the nomination, and then we pulled in a bunch of other senators. So Senator Casey from Pennsylvania was very strong in this, as well as I think our biggest champion was Senator Schumer behind Senator Brown, was incredible in this, and he made it very clear that he wouldn't support the nomination. Senator Stabenow was also incredible in asking really good questions. And so moving forward, although this subject is not as interesting as some legislation, they're really important because trustees have an important job to be watchdogs for us and take care of our money. And so we really want to continue to push forward and making sure that not only do we have good pieces of legislation and that members of Congress are doing what they're supposed to do, but also that people like the public trustees also, that we hold them accountable for what they're supposed to do as well. And so I didn't realize your topic today was labor and jobs, but I'm really excited to hear you all are working on like paycheck fairness and minimum wage, and encourage you to find ways to tie in Social Security when you talk about labor, because Social Security doesn't work without workers. That's how it operates. We can't depend on a system without workers. If one day we all decide to retire and not to work anymore, well, then Social Security will in fact go broke. But since that's not the case, then continue to work on things like minimum wage, because they matter a lot. A lot of the reasons why we're seeing the trust funds deplete is because wages have not kept up they haven't kept up, and income inequality is drastic. And so things like the minimum wage and, like you said, paycheck fairness are extremely important. So I encourage you to tie in Social Security whenever you can when you're talking about these things. So I think that's all I have two more things, I guess. These are just resources for you. We do have some new fact sheets for you when you go onto our website. So there's one series, it's called Social Security Works for America. And so there's a whole list of fact sheets. So it's Social Security Works for women, Social Security Works for African Americans, Social Security Works for the LGBT community, the Social Security Works for whoever you could think of, pretty much. We made a fact sheet for them, and those are really good resources when you're going into offices or when you're talking to members, just to pinpoint Social Security affects everyone, but just to pinpoint a particular group, those are really good resources. And then secondly, as you're doing election work, if you do any election work on your own time, then we have different fact sheets for members, or maybe not necessarily members, but people who are running, who have bad stances about Social Security. And if we don't have their fact sheet, then we're definitely willing to make fact sheets. And so if you have any members who you see, who you know, this happened last week. Someone wrote us and they said, well, we have a member from, I don't remember what state, and they're probably not good on Social Security. Can you make a fact sheet? We looked it up. They are, in fact, not good on Social Security, and made a fact sheet for that particular member of the House. So those are really good resources to have when you go into the election season. And if you need any of that, please feel free to ask us for anything. We are more than willing to make things happen for you and make fact sheets like that. So that's all I have. But if you have any questions, I can answer it. But
Any questions?
I didn't think so. Not a...
Cool. That's because that was such a great presentation. I've got some other information about Social Security. So again, I love the power of our always voters, their ability to get out there and to stop bad nominations from going through. Also, on Thursday at 8 p.m., Ernie Powell is going to be hosting his inaugural show, People Power with Ernie Powell, and the guest will be none other than Alex Lawson of Social Security Works. And now this particular show is really going to be aimed for activists who are going to want to work around the issue of Social Security expansion and tying in all these various constituencies. So I'm very excited, Jasmine, to hear about all the resources and fact sheets that you're putting together. And one of the things that we're working on at People Demanding Action is the Resource Hub. And the Resource Hub is designed so that we can point people to fact sheets on issues that they care about and provide them with support on organizing around those issues. So there's a lot of people out there, because it is an election year, that are getting very excited and want to get very involved in issues, but many people have never done anything like this before. So we have organizers standing by who can help you put on events, anything from a local coffee clutch, organizing a town hall that features a number of these different issues, and or just going and tabling at a local farmer's market. So how do you do that? What materials should you bring? So all those different things. And then one other thing. Social Security and Medicare both have a birthday in, late July, August. So the end of July for Medicare, Social Security is August. Our August letter drops are going to revolve around expanding and protecting the social safety net. So we're going to be delivering letters about Medicare for all, expanded and improved Medicare for all, and our Social Security legislation. So look for that come August. Now, since I've got a couple of minutes while we're waiting for Representative Spears' office to come and join us, I want to talk about our upcoming roundtables. In June, we're going to be focusing on civil rights and voting rights because Juneteenth is the 19th of June. Our June roundtables and our June letter drops have historically been all about voting. So we will again be talking about voting. We're also going to be talking about, again, constitutional pay equity, since we're going to be looking at making modifications to the Constitution. Stephen Spitz will be speaking later, and Stephen always tells everybody constitutional amendments virtually never happen alone. There is always an era where groups of constitutional amendments almost like they come in sets. And again, it's when people reach the point where they are fed up enough and there is enough momentum behind modifying the American Constitution, we generally manage to do it for not just a single issue, but normally for a number of issues. And as we have really seen this year, since voting is not a right, it has been a major, major issue in a number of states throughout the country. So if people thought that voting was a right in 2016, I think what has happened in this primary has really helped people to see, no, it isn't a right. It is a privilege that has merely been expanded. And whenever you're talking about privileges, privileges can be very easily taken away. But something that is a real right cannot. Since Stephen, you are here, I'm going to have you walk around and come around to the front, and I want you to talk about Medicare expanded and improved Medicare for all. This is an issue that has been very front and center in this year's presidential campaign, and it's very, very interesting to hear what's been going on in a southern state at some of our local conventions. So, Stephen, thank you.
Thanks, Andrea, for the opportunity to talk about this. I am a delegate for Bernie Sanders. We just had our 11th congressional district in Northern Virginia state convention this past Saturday. And there was a resolution among the packet of resolutions calling for Medicare for all, single payer. We anticipated, and it happened, that the Hillary delegation, which outnumbered us 2-1, would make an attempt to extract that and withdraw it from the resolutions package, thereby killing it. And there was a motion to withdraw the amendment, the resolution. the motion, the proponent of the motion said that Medicare for All would cost more money. And our own Sean Barnett, who is a member of the End Corporate Rule team, he wrote the Medicare for All resolution, and he said, no, actually, it will wind up costing far less for Americans to have Medicare for All than the amount of money that we currently pay to these private insurance and drug companies. And one of the people who was a Hillary delegate who had worked in the Clinton administration at the Department of Treasury got up and spoke in favor of the Medicare for All amendment because he said, I know that Hillary was trying to push for universal health care, and I think we need to push her back in that direction. So the motion was called, the yeas were for killing the resolution, and the noes were for keeping it. So the nays were called for, and there were some meek yeas, and then a resounding roar of noes. We have a Medicare for All resolution coming out of the 11th Congressional District. Now, my urging of all of the people who may be listening is anything is possible in terms of these resolutions. We should push them in congressional district conventions, in state conventions, and at the national convention in Philadelphia. And I just wanted to give one example of how just the simple resolution can snowball into actually happening, and that is the example of restoration of voting rights in the state in which I live and Andrea lives and Rick over there, Virginia. I introduced a resolution, Jasmine as well, okay. So Jasmine, you may be interested in this. I introduced a resolution to the Fairfax County Democratic Committee maybe 6 years ago, calling for automatic restoration of folks who have felony convictions to get their right to vote back. That was taken to the state Democratic Party where it passed unanimously, I say about 6 years ago. Since that time, I and Andrea and lots of other people have been nagging governor after governor and staffer after staffer, you need to issue an executive order. Stop this dribble drabble of just getting one at a time and bragging because you have a few more than the last governor, which is all token. And what just happened in Virginia was that Governor Terry McAuliffe issued an executive order automatically restoring the right to vote in Virginia for all people, regardless of the nature of their crime, whether or not it was violent or not violent, as long as they had completed parole or probation, not contingent upon their paying fines. And it's estimated that that will restore over 200,000 people to be able to vote. And so that's a momentous achievement. As Andrea had said about the right to vote, that's the most basic right that we have as American citizens, and to exclude hundreds of thousands of people, most of whom are African American and Latino, from Virginia is just simply wrong. And so just back to the original topic, it may seem as if a resolution is sort of like just a symbolic gesture, but in fact, if we push and use these resolutions and pass them and push the elected officials, they can be the basis of eventual positive outcomes.
Thank you, Stephen. And again, it was literally surprising when Governor McAuliffe issued his executive order. And Stephen, you and I probably knew that something was in the wind when literally the week that he did it, we all got calls from the Office of the Secretary of Commonwealth inviting us down to a not exactly specified, but important announcement from the governor. So we were trying to figure out, all right, now what exactly would that announcement be? And I remember thinking, well, The main thing that I've been advocating for with the governor that he hadn't yet supported was the restoration of voting rights. So, and then it was delightful to see that, yes, that really was what it was. So thank you, Stephen. Again, our congressional office hasn't made it down yet. That's always one of the amazing things whenever we have members of Congress and their staff. So many things come up at the last minute. So Valencia, can I have you come down and talk about the incarceration of the mentally ill and what you've been working on? Valencia is our leader of People Demanding Action in D.C., and we work together on the en masse criminalization team. And as many of you know who have watched these roundtables, Valencia has a daughter who is currently in federal prison in Carswell, Texas, and she has been doing a tremendous amount of lobbying and advocating for her daughter's release. And additionally, we now have the executive order from President Obama basically telling the Bureau of Prisons to end the practice of the solitary confinement of the mentally ill. And what we're hoping is that we will eventually be able to end the practice of the incarceration of the mentally ill. So Valencia, take it away.
I'd like to thank you, Andrea, and I also like to thank the individuals and members of People Demanding Action across the country for your support in this matter. The petition we did, I don't know if is the petition live now?
No, not yet.
Okay, so anyway, we wrote a petition that'll be out shortly, and in that petition, it specifically states that we would like to end the mass incarceration of the mentally ill. As Andrea did state earlier, my daughter is in Carswell FMC, Carswell Federal Medical Center in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. It is the only prison institution in the Bureau of Prisons for females who have long-term medical conditions and mental illness. And I have to say, for me, my daughter is like a martyr. I'm not happy that she went there, but as a result of her going there, I had the opportunity to see exactly what happens to other women who are incarcerated under these kinds of conditions. I think now my daughter was in isolation. They call it isolation. President Obama called it solitary confinement, and I call it solitary confinement for more than 800 days. I guess for a lot of people, you know, you talk to some inmates, they say they were in there for 25 years in solitary confinement. But for a person with who suffers, as my daughter does, from schizoaffective disorder and schizophrenia, that's like 25 years. She has about less than 60 days left. So I send her a calendar of every Saturday how many days she has left. And so we're doing a countdown. Because the airline rates have gone up tremendously, I don't have the opportunity to travel like I did before of going every 3 weeks. You know, it's like soared. And so now I call in to the warden's office and ask if I may speak with her. And then they go through this routine of saying, well, we can only ask her to call you, and if she doesn't want to call you, we can't force her. The last time I had the opportunity to talk with my daughter, let's say in April, she didn't even know she had a mother. To me, this is the result of long-term solitary confinement. She didn't have a mother, and if she did have one, she didn't want her to come see her because if she came, she might be killed. So, you know, like all this has had a tremendous toll on our family, just trying to get some semblance of what's going on. And as Andrea stated earlier, we have been writing President Obama, sent him 28 pages. He hasn't responded. We wrote to the Texas congressmen and women. Sheila Jackson Lee did respond and said that it was really out of her jurisdiction, but she would try to do the best that she could. We wrote Eleanor Holmes Norton's office. The delegate for the District of Columbia has been very helpful. And with that, she has demanded that Malika be taken out of isolation, solitary confinement. Last Friday, I did have the opportunity of speaking with Malika. And at first she didn't know who I was. Finally, when she recognized that I was her mother and I was still alive, that she said, when I asked her some questions, she always hesitated before she would answer. Like she paused, like she was looking around the room. I said, put the phone on speakerphone. I want everybody to hear the questions that I'm asking you. And when she did that, then she broke down in tears and she says, they want me to give you answers that are not true. So it was, like, I'm here in DC. She's 1,400 miles away. I found it very difficult to, get her to answer my questions in the manner that I really wanted to, because I didn't know what was going to happen to my daughter once she left that area. And so she said she was still in isolation. In the back, her case manager said, no, she's not. I asked her, well, how was your roommate since you're not in isolation? She says, I don't have a roommate, but the case manager said that she did. But I just let her know that regardless of if they want to continue, the charade and the lies about what's going on, that she had 60-something days at that time. Now it's less than 60. And let's just do a countdown. And every day whenever she gets an opportunity, if she gets an opportunity to go outside, that's one of the things she told me. Finally, she's allowed to go outside. For over 700 days, she was not allowed to go outside. Finally, she's allowed to go outside, and she was allowed to mingle, but after that, after a couple of hours of being out, then she has to go back into her quarters, her area. So I just asked her to do the countdown. It's coming, and I have received notice from what they call CSOSA here, Court Services, which is the probation services here, and the Bureau of Prisons, that they have begun the exiting interview process for my daughter. So she wants to write a book. She said that she wanted to write a book, and I want to write her memoirs for her. She dictated to me, because I think the story needs to be told. And after my daughter comes out, just know, and she's in a safe area here in the District of Columbia, we intend to go full force on this legislation and this whole petition aspect, so that no other female, no other person who is mentally ill will have to suffer in the same manner as my daughter did. Thank you.
Thank you, Valencia, as always, for sharing a very, very, very personal story of suffering. Again, the United Nations has said that solitary confinement for people that are mentally strong and mentally normal is torture. So again, it is almost impossible to imagine what solitary confinement would be like for someone who's currently suffering from a mental illness. So now I want to welcome Molly Fishman from the Office of Representative Jackie Spear. We will get the congressman here hopefully next month when we do our civil rights and voting rights round table. So Molly is going to give us an update on what's going on now with the House Resolution HJ Res 51, the three-state strategy, remove the deadline from the Equal Rights Amendment. So Molly, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Andrea, and thanks to all of you guys for having me here today. A couple quick updates on Congresswoman Spear's resolution. We are very excited to announce that we have our first Republican co-sponsor on the bill, which is great. Representative Cynthia Lummis from Wyoming. And although the Congresswoman is unfortunately retiring this year, because she is, I think she's perhaps a bit more willing to help really rev up the support for this, hopefully across her party. So that's very exciting. We haven't had a Republican co-sponsor prior to this. That brings us up to a total of 163 co-sponsors total. Another thing that the Congresswoman is working on this Congress before the end of the year is we'd really like to have the entire Democratic caucus on the bill. I think we have around 28 Democratic members who are not yet on the bill, including a couple who were on the bill last Congress that I think was just a bit of an oversight that it was introduced. So we're working on reaching out to those offices. And, also while we rev up support for the bill, we know that it's a partnership both between Congress to get the deadline removed and then also 3 more states to get it ratified. And we were excited to see that Virginia State Senate passed the ERA back in January of this year and, hoping the House takes it up soon. Also looking at, great local momentum going in Nevada, Illinois, and North Carolina. So, I think there's a question.
Who were those 2 members who were on last year and haven't yet?
I don't have them offhand, but Andrea knows my email address. I'd be happy to provide them. I have them back at my desk. Yeah. So if there are no other questions, thanks guys for having me. Oh, one more.
Do you have any idea how many of the people on the Congressional Progressive Caucus are not on the bill?
I don't, but I could provide you the list of co-sponsors and also the list of the caucus if you want to kind of cross-reference that way. Yeah. Great. Thank you, guys. Thanks for your support.
All right. Thank you, Molly. Always delightful to have you join us. There are 188 Democrats in the House. If 163 members of Congress are on the bill, 162 are Democrats. That really does leave us. We are missing, like Molly said, it's looks like 26 is the number that we are missing. So really, really want to work on getting those recalcitrant Dems on a bill that every Democrat, realistically every Republican, should really be supporting. Because why would you be against equal pay for equal work? Oh, I'm not sure what kind of little animal I want to say is in my throat, frog or kitty cat. It's like, geez, that is feeling really, really weird. All righty. So, yes. So, again, every year in Virginia, Women Matter is leading our charge down there. And we bring the bill forward to the Virginia General Assembly. And we always get it through the Senate with the support of an amazing Virginia Senator, Senator Jill Holtzman Vogel, who sits on the committee where our bill is always placed. And she has been the one consistent Republican vote that always brings our bill out of committee. We have not been successful in the House, so again, we have always really stressed that this is a bipartisan issue and that Congress and the states need to work together on this. So hopefully in the next upcoming session, which will now not be until 2017 for Virginia, we will bring it up again. So we are still waiting to see Nevada, Illinois, North Carolina, and I believe this year, well, in 2017, Alabama is going to consider bringing the bill, and Arizona brought the bill once before. We are going to look at seeing if we can again get Arizona to bring the bill to their legislature. So that would give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 states that are actively working on it. And in North Carolina, and they've partnered and teamed up with Moral Monday, and so there is a lot of support in North Carolina regarding this legislation. So we are really hoping that coming off of all the excitement of a presidential year and all people that are really going to be interested in getting actively involved in politics, that we will see a renewed push in our unratified states to get this legislation introduced to ratify the ERA. So thank you, Molly, for joining us. For our next guest, Ingrid, come on down. We've been doing letter drops today on Capitol Hill. I've been dropping letters. Valencia's been dropping letters. And our End Wars and Occupations team, they brought a special letter that they were delivering to House members. And I want Ingrid to talk about this legislation that Representative Betty McCollum of Minnesota is looking to bring out. Actually, it's not really going to be a bill, it's going to be a letter to President Obama. So Ingrid, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Andrea. Yes, Representative Betty McCollum, who's from the 4th District of Minnesota, did write a letter, and she has circulated a Dear Colleague letter asking for co-signers, and that's what I am asking you for, if anyone's listening today, to contact your representative and ask that representative to become an original author and co-sign this letter to President Obama. The subject of the letter is the creation of a special envoy to Palestine to investigate the situation of Palestinian children. The situation there is bad, as we know, and this sense of hopelessness that they have of not going anywhere, not being able to work, sometimes not being able to get an education, is driving a kind of state of desperation, which is not good for anybody's security. It's not good for the security of the Palestinians themselves, or as we've seen from these senseless stabbings, it's not good for Israeli security. So the job of this special envoy would be to travel to Palestine and Israel, talk to parties on all sides, even talk to some of the children. There are now over 400, I believe 440 Palestinian children who are incarcerated, many of them with no charges, and some as young as 12 years old. And also the special envoy would talk to activists, lawyers, people in the Palestinian community. Andrea has kindly handed me the actual text, as she can see. I'm trying to remember. But the point is, there's 2 more days until this Friday, May 20th, to have your representatives sign onto this letter to President Obama. And I think that's about it. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, I wanted you to read the letter.
Oh, you wanted me to read the letter? Well, this is my letter.
Yes.
This is not Betty McCollum's. But anyway, recently you received a Dear Colleague letter from Congresswoman Betty McCollum asking that you join her appeal to President Obama to support a special envoy for Palestinian children. The last day for signing as an original author is this Friday, May 20. We hope you'll take this opportunity to support dignity and security for the children of Palestine. We know that you value human rights, and here, of course, I'm speaking to the members of Congress to whom I delivered this letter, and we know that you particularly support the rights of children. The current situation is producing a generation imbued with trauma. Almost half of the 5 million Palestinians living under Israeli military occupation are children. These young people should be able to grow up without the constant fear of home demolitions, physical violence, and even imprisonment. Over 400 Palestinian children, some as young as 12, are locked up in military prisons, Israeli military prisons. The latest seemingly random acts of violence, including the senseless stabbings, are largely a product of desperation. The security of all parties is threatened by this climate of hopelessness. The role of the special envoy is to visit Palestine, Israel, meet directly with lawyers, activists, and the imprisoned children themselves, and then make recommendations for the president to act. The goal is to promote greater human rights and opportunities for Palestinian youth. A special envoy will help ensure that Department of State makes the human rights of Palestinian children a priority and sends a signal that Congress and the American people expect the government of Prime Minister Netanyahu to respect and protect the rights of Palestinian children under their control. Along with our colleagues, Jewish Voice for Peace, American Friends Service Committee, Defense for Children International, and numerous other human rights organizations, we urge you to endorse Congresswoman McCollum's letter calling for a special envoy for Palestinian children. To join the letter, to join the letter to President Obama, please contact Charles Martin. Should I read the phone number? Contact 225-6631. That's McCollum's office. Contact her office as soon as possible. As I say, the last day to become an original author is in 2 days, this Friday.
Thank you, Ingrid. I want to give you an update on the people's budget. As most people have probably noticed, there was no fiscal year 2017 budget. And if there is no vote on the budget, since the people's budget is always presented as a budget amendment, that means we will not see a vote on the people's budget either. So what we are going to see this year is we are going to see a series of appropriations. And so look for a whole series of petitions where we will either be asking people to oppose the appropriation or to support the appropriation. The third appropriation just came out of the Senate. THUD would be Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development. And what was very surprising about that particular, what? I don't make this stuff up. THUD. Right, THUD. All right. What was very surprising about this appropriation was that it was a very positive appropriation, and there were no attempts at any major cuts to either housing and urban development or transportation. So that has not come over to the House, but it was very, very successful in the Senate, so that was delightful. Stephen?
I have a question on that. Was there any attempt to include FAA privatization of air traffic controllers?
Not in the budget. Now, the Senate bill was very successful in that the FAA reauthorization has no privatization in it whatsoever. And that bill did successfully pass the Senate. So now, when the House takes it up, the question again will be, will Schuster, as chair of the committee, reconcile directly with the version of the bill that the Senate passed, or will he continue to try and introduce some brand of privatization? There have been a couple of petitions that were sent around where they basically urged Bill Schuster to resign, go away, step aside, whatever, and he very, very narrowly won his primary. And the main reason this was coming about was the petition very clearly explained that Bill Schuster's newest significant other is a lobbyist for the airline industry. And while he says, oh, she doesn't lobby my office directly, wink, wink, it's like, okay, it's the other indirect lobbying that we're dealing with. So that was kind of a very interesting explanation. I think it's one of those explanations where when you read it the next day in writing, you're kind of like, well, maybe I shouldn't have explained it exactly that way. So it's going to be interesting to see what goes on in the House with the FAA reauthorization. We also had another win, and that's always very, very important because on the progressive side, a lot of times we don't see a lot of wins in rapid succession. But we were successful in our overtime pay that we've been working on. We submitted, there were a number of petitions that were going around asking basically the Department of Labor to not let the time expire when they were raising the minimum for guaranteed overtime. And they did act, so we were very, very successful, and that was approved. Do we have any announcements? I'm not sure where all of my special guests are, but they are either all planning on arriving at the end or something. I'll go ahead and do one of the announcements in the event that Alex isn't able to join us. On Monday and Tuesday next week, the folks who lobby for marijuana legalization campaign, our folks at Drug Policy Alliance, and our friends at Normal, they are having their big national lobby day in D.C. So on Monday, the 23rd, they will be doing a training on how to lobby, and on Tuesday, that will be their lobby day. Now, I've asked for a copy of the letter that they are going to be delivering to the various members of Congress because I was hoping that there might be people in district who would be interested in doing their own mini lobby day and possibly visiting the local offices where we here in D.C. are going to visit every member of Congress, dropping off a letter asking them to support full legalization of marijuana. And then there are also some veterans and medical marijuana bills. Valencia?
Yes, I was going to say that I'm planning on going with the DC Normal group. I don't have a copy of the letter either, but there is a meeting tonight.
Okay.
They have a strategy meeting tonight. Also, DCNJ, the group that started the Initiative 71, which became a bill here in the District of Columbia for recreational marijuana, is having their fourth smoke out in front of the White House this Saturday. So they actually
Okay.
And the person moved marijuana smoke right in front of the officer's face, so the officer thought it was very disrespectful.
Okay, right.
And he was like, oh, wait. But after that, we've had very good turnouts. Hundreds of people have come from around the country to participate in these events as a matter of just a civil disobedience. And it was thought-provoking. It was scary at first well, after we saw like dozens of police officers, and as soon as they lit up their joints at 4:20, all of a sudden the officers went the other way. Except for the one that smoking space.
So, all right,
So
yeah.
we have another one coming out, and there's been a lot of activism involved here, where we're engaging with people from around the country and other states where they do not have medical marijuana or recreational marijuana. They are looking at DC as a hub because a lot, just like we said before here, we are here every day.
Right.
We have opportunity to go in front of the White House, to go to the members of Congress and the Senate on a daily basis. And I think you had, what's his name, was here last month.
Lewis.
Lewis. Lewis was here last month, and he comes on the Hill almost every week. And so we have people who are definitely engaged in this, and I'll be writing something for the People Demanding Action website.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so people can see exactly what we are doing here.
And then news from Colorado. The marijuana tax has basically generated so much money for the state of Colorado. It has basically bypassed the revenue that they receive from alcohol. They are now committing part of that money to resolving the homeless issue in the state of Colorado. Stephen.
Yes, I wanted to announce that Andrea and I and Eileen Davis, who is the primary person in Virginia on the ERA, Women Matter, Mimi Kennedy, Donna Smith, and Jan Campbell, and Celeste Drake with the AFL-CIO will all be in two panels that PDA is going to be presenting at the Left Forum in New York City this weekend. The two panels, one of them, in case anybody is in New York or wants to go to New York, the first panel is a privatization panel, and I will be this is interesting. Andrea has designated me as a moderator of 5 women, so I'm not supposed to, I don't know what I'm supposed to do to moderate 5 women, but there are 5 women going to be talking on various privatization issues, privatization of prisons, of healthcare, of water, of elections, of trade, yeah, you mentioned prisons, and the commons, and the Social Security folks have, I think, beaten back, maybe forever, hopefully, privatization of Social Security. But the focus on this is that there are ongoing attempts to privatize as much as possible so that corporate interests can make money off of things that we share in common. The other panel is going to be, I think, hopefully, part of what seems to be a growing movement. I have heard that Free Speech for People is going to put on something this September to try to come up with what Andrea had referred earlier, of a new progressive era of constitutional reform. And there have been 4 such periods previously in history, and one was, of course, the Bill of Rights. They wouldn't get the Constitution ratified without those first 10 amendments, which are obviously very important, including the one that we take most advantage of, and that is free speech. Then there were the Civil War amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, all very important amendments, equal protection, the can't discriminate on the basis of race in voting, and obviously abolishing slavery. Then you had the progressive era at the turn of the 19th into the 20th century. You had women getting the right to vote. You had the state legislatures no longer selecting senators, but have direct election of senators. And you had the federal income tax. Then you had another amendment that passed and was repealed, that's prohibition. And then in the period between 61 and 71, you had 4 more amendments, including, importantly, D.C. citizens getting to vote in presidential elections, the 18-year-old vote, etc. So what you have now, and we're going to speak to 3 amendments, and that is the Right to Vote Amendment that Andrea is going to speak about. I will speak about a constitutional amendment to say that money is not speech and corporations are not people, and overturning Citizens United, and Eileen Davis will be talking about the Equal Rights Amendment. So that's on Sunday at 10 o'clock at the City University of New York, John Jay College, and the privatization panel will be on Saturday at 10 at the same location, this Saturday.
Oh, great. Steve, I was going to ask you to come on over and talk a little bit about what we're working on at People Demanding Action, and if there is any news from the American Sustainable Business Council or its local affiliate, the Chesapeake Area Sustainable Business Council. Steve Schaff.
All right, thank you, Andrea. People Demanding Action, as you all know, is an expansion of Progressive Democrats of America, and we officially started last year, but a lot of the work we've been developing has really been happening for the last several years. What we discovered last year, as Andrea was focusing her time and attention to really put together what we needed to do to complement the good work of Progressive Democrats of America, which is a federal PAC that always did much more, went beyond the call of duty with the PAC. What we've accomplished over the last year has been not only remarkable and amazing, but we've really helped solidify the allies and partners who've been wanting to work with us for years. And in that regards, we've gotten a lot of affirmation about the good work we're doing because of the response and the commitments from all these groups. All that to say is that People Demanding Action has sort of evolved into a number of initiatives that were frankly already in place, but it wasn't quite structured in a way where we realized we have a lot of good things going on. Now we need to articulate them better, reach out to our collaborators. So we have got a number of priorities and issues that are going on that we will be building this year, along with, of course, PDA's work with Bernie and all the other great work that's going on. So it's a more incredible, active year than we normally have. But all that to say is that People Demanding Action, we are poised to really begin moving out and concentrating on many more issues, much more deeply within the community, on the local state level, something that PDA was not able to do officially or from a pragmatic way. And a lot of this is about to kick in. As we talked about earlier, one of the first things we realized as an initiative we needed to jump on right away, because it's a unique opportunity that affects a lot of things, is the McCall's announcement that over 206,000 people now are going to regain their rights to be able to vote. So we thought and we realized, wait a minute, 206,000 people in probably one of the most critical states in this next election, whether you like the candidates who are going to be running or not, it's going to be really important that those 206,000 people get registered and vote. Now, on paper, that sounds so simple, it sounds like a great opportunity, but no way. First, these 206,000 people have to know that they're all of a sudden regained the right. 2, they need to know what they have to do to get registered. And beyond that, not only do they have to get registered, but their community has to help them get to vote. Because clearly in Virginia and many other states, as we all know, the voter suppression that works so well that every vote counts. So an initiative that we've completely stumbled into, but quickly were able to take advantage of, given the history and the background and the infrastructure already in place, is how do we reach out, go after these folks, let them know that they need to register and vote. It's not going to be an easy thing. So we're putting together a whole initiative. Steven Spitz and Andrea and past allies are going to get back together, and we're looking to build that out. We have 4 months to work on that. But like a lot of things with people demanding action, we're not just what's exciting this year and let's concentrate on that. We're strategic. So it's not just the next 4 months. In Virginia, 2017 is a big election year. So this is a two-step process. Let's get as many registrations, governor in Virginia. So it's a two-step process. One, let's get these folks, as many of these folks registered as possible, and get them engaged back into the community in other ways that they may not have been in the past. But also let's make sure that they get out there in 2017 and beyond. So that's one great example of what People Demanding Action is doing with our relationships. We've got a number of other things that we're really putting together. And one of the things that I think has really been outstanding about People Demanding Action is, let's face it, the progressive movement, and in the Sanders campaign you're seeing this, is very homogeneous. Well-meaning older white folks like me, can't do it all. It's got to be everyone. People Demanding Action, one of the things that has impressed me most is that very quickly, a lot of very diverse, deep in the community, as well as here on the Hill and in DC and inside the Beltway, groups are coming out. We are more diverse than we have ever been. Very quickly, we became very diverse. So the point I'm making is that we're creating a real coalition of everyone out there, faith-based, social justice, environmental movement, so on, et cetera, as you know, is one of the most segregated movements you're going to find. Another area is, of course, faith-based, but business, as Andrea had mentioned. My background is as a social entrepreneur, combined with political and community action, has really compelled me to try to get more businesses involved. And if businesses don't get involved, it's a sleeping giant that can actually resist the status quo. So, but businesses are very hard and to compel to get involved. So through the work of the American Sustainable Business Council, which is sort of the counter to the Chamber of Commerce, and other initiatives like the Chesapeake Sustainable Business Council, which I helped found and is much more focused on the local area, we are beginning to really bring the business sector in, slowly but surely. Meanwhile, we're working with faith-based and all these other groups that don't always connect together with political activist organizations like ourselves. So these are all things that are happening now. It's a great compliment. PDA is doing outstanding things. Now we're in a situation where PDA finally has that support arm, legal and much more designed to be the organizers, the trainers, and the supporters of other groups. And we've got a whole bunch of other initiatives we won't go into now that are designed to help other organizations be more effective in what they're doing, as well as initiatives that will create stronger coalitions that are not just one-shot deals, but coalitions that will help us not only be very effective in 2016, but even more importantly, 2020. As we all know, 2010, we all kicked back and took it easy, and then we got our clocks clean in 2010 and 14, and that set us back a generation until 2020, when we can get back and work on the local levels, which PD Action is really going to be focusing on to help turn these local or state legislatures back into a more normal balance. North Carolina, anyone? So we are really pleased with what we're doing. We've got a great a number of people really paying attention to us. We're really building out, so we're building out our structures, looking for funding, so on, et cetera, while we're working on initiatives like the one in Virginia, which we are going to be working on very aggressively as we speak. So a lot of good stuff going on, bringing businesses, getting faith-based, really branching out and bringing in a lot of these issues like mass incarceration and other things that really tie in so much with what's wrong, but potentially what's really right about our country. So a little bit about PDA, PD Action. You'll hear more as we go along. Stay tuned. Spread the word. PDA is getting stronger and better than ever. PD Action is really doing great work, and we have some other good stuff that we're working on as well that we'll talk about as details start coming into place. So a little bit of summary for you.
A great summary, and thank you very much, Steve. One of the things I want to talk about is we do have a number of campaigns. Many people saw the Zero Climate Emissions mega petition that was circulated by 20 different organizations. As a result of that petition, we are working with some of the partners to really kick off the Zero Climate Emissions campaign, where our goal is to get 100 co-sponsors, and we also want to have at least 1 million people be aware that this campaign is out there because we are in a climate emergency. I spoke earlier about the people's budget. The people's budget is now going to be moving into, as I said, we are going to be fighting the upcoming appropriations that are coming out, and then B, we're going to be preparing for fiscal year 2018 budget. So we are going to be looking at hosting a series of town halls throughout the country. Our partner is Progressive Congress and the Progressive Caucus. So we will be working to move members of Congress that were very, very, very instrumental in working on the budget to be able to visit and anchor these town halls. We are still very, very actively involved in our work on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Our webinars are now every other Sunday. We do have some exceptional months, so we are going to have a webinar coming up this Sunday on the 22nd. So look at the website, www.peopledemandingaction.org, go under events, and we will have posted the upcoming workshop or webinar on the 22nd. We will be launching a new campaign on immigration. It's something PDA has wanted to do for a very long time. We will be anchoring that, of course, with the team that is in Arizona. They have been at the forefront of that particular fight. So they will be working with us as we begin amassing information on legislation, both at the federal level and then also good legislation that could be model legislation at the state level. I mentioned that there is an upcoming incarceration of the mentally ill petition coming out. We are working on a mega petition for DC statehood that will be coming out hopefully in June as part of our voting rights campaign. We are also working on a mega petition on jobs. We are currently looking to get language put together for that. And then we are also going to want to do a mega petition for Medicare for all. The purpose of these mega petitions is really to let literally millions of people know that this legislation is out there. Congress routinely now gets very, very low marks for what they are able to accomplish because so many people really don't know that there is wonderful legislation that's been introduced in Congress. It's just that there normally are not enough co-sponsors of that legislation to make it even eligible to come to the floor for a vote. So there's a lot of different things that we are working on. And a quick question to Mike. Do you know if Senator Raskin's going to be able to make it?
Next month.
Okie dokie. Well, we are going to do something then that I always talk about doing, but we have never in our history managed to do. We are going to finish early. We are going to be early. It's never happened before. People are going, whoa, we're actually early. Yes, we are. So I want to thank everyone for listening and watching this roundtable. Please check the website tonight and tomorrow. I'm going to have a number of different items that I'm going to be adding. Watch for our petitions and the mega petitions as they come out around these issues. Not only sign them, but please share them with your friends on social media, because that is going to be part of our goal to educate our fellow citizens on the good things that Congress does and the members that are behind all these good things. So I'm going to make one last call for announcements. Hearing none, I'm going to thank everybody for watching. Good afternoon.